with some prayer. Gonna have some prayer. Yeah. Thank you, Lord, for this time that we have together. Thank you for getting us all here safely on this beautiful Michigan evening. I ask, Lord, that what I'm about to throw out there not come from me. Help me to preach to myself before I preach to folk. Help me to explain this in as simple a means that I can. And don't let me say anything that you don't want. Amen. I am teaching a series on the 10 commandments. 10 of them, one for every commandment. Today we start number 3. We learned what the 10 commandments are. The 10 commandments established the base set of rules for the relationship that we have with God, right? That's what we've learned thus far. They were set up in a harsh time. They were set up in a time during war. The folks, Israel was being pursued by the Egyptians. They were out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. It was a hard time. God needed rules to maintain these folk and not just kind of a general understanding between people, because folks, when you're in that situation, tend to be a little bit rambunctious, let's say. So, setting up ground rules for a relationship is very important. It happens in every relationship that we have. When you go to an interview, you sit down at the table, and you're not really meeting that person. The same within the relationship. I always tell folks, whenever you're going out on a date with somebody for the first time, you haven't actually met that person. You're meeting their representative. You're meeting who they want you to meet. At an interview, the person says, okay, this is what the job demands. The person says, this is what's going to be entailed in taking this position. And what you'll get is a pay of this amount. You'll get 401k. You'll get nice benefits. We go out on picnics every so often. You build up vacation time and paid time off. They don't tell you that you'll also be working for a tyrannical, crazy person who isn't actually going to communicate what he wants from you, but only wants you to read his mind and then yell at you when you don't, right? And you don't tell them, you tell them, oh, I love to work. I love to work in a group of people. I work really well with other folks. You tell them I love to make sure that I'm prioritized in my life and I make sure that I'm doing everything that I can do. And you don't tell them that I'm 5 minutes late to every day that I work. You don't tell them that usually what I do is I punch in and then I go use the bathroom. You don't tell them those things because that's not what you want them to hear. You want to get the good qualities out about you and they want to give you their good qualities, right? Exactly. You want to get in there and the best. Same thing happens with a relationship. Let's say a romantic relationship. Like I said, when you're going out with a young lady or young man, that person is actually their representative and is not actually the person that you're meeting just yet. Sit down. It's the first time you're sitting across the table from somebody. Hey, how you doing? What you going on? Yes, when I was a kid, this happened, and we used to have a good time. Yeah, I love doing this, and I love doing that. You don't tell them that, I pick the toenail polish off of my toes and leave it in little piles here and there. Or I have a tendency to fart in the car. You don't tell them these things because that's not what you want them to know, right? So there has to be a set ground rules to go along with what you're telling folks, right? You get the relationship started, everything's going cool. You're sitting down and you're hanging out with this new guy, everything's cool. He comes in the house and he says, all right, baby, I'm going out with the guys. We're going to a strip club. I'll see you later tonight. Oh, excuse me. Exactly. Oh, no, you ain't. You must be crazy. Yeah. You must be crazy. You ain't going to do that with me. Well, I could do it with my last girlfriend. Well, maybe you should go back and find her. We all know how that ended last time, right? Those are the ground. You stop that head off. Yeah, all right, baby. I'm going to go up and spend a weekend with my ex-boyfriend. I'll talk to you on Monday. And yeah, you must be, oh no, right? And that's okay because you guys are setting up a relationship with one another. So there has to be a mutual respect set up between you two, right? There has to be a back and forth. There has to be an understanding that, all right, I'm going to go out of my way and not bother you this way, and you're going to do the same back in return, right? So that's what the 10 Commandments did for us. The 10 Commandments set up a set of rules, a ground set for where we could start, right? Because everybody knows the old adage: if you let it happen once, it's just going to keep happening, right? What do they say? You give them an inch, they take a mile. That's right. You give them 2 inches, they take 5. Give a nigga rope, want to be a cowboy, Gus, right? That's what happens. You let them get away with it once, they're just going to keep going with it, right, in the same direction. It's the same thing with any relationship that you have, with kids especially, because kids love to test their boundaries. So, I've also mentioned that an edifying relationship is not based on rules and regulations, right? To have a real strong relationship with somebody, it can't be set up on rules. It can't be set up on a contract. Because at that point, you're satisfying the contract. You're not satisfying the partner that's in the relationship, right? If I can't have a relationship with, let's say, Benny here, if all she says is, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that, and I get to do whatever outside of what she said. But the problem is that you can't get every single little thing that could possibly happen in there. Folks go to school for years and years and years just so that they're able to compose this big old long drawn out contract that's several pages thick that lists out every little thing, because other folks have lawyers that read through that and try to find loopholes out of that contract, right? That's not an edifying relationship. An edifying relationship should be something that helps the two of you grow, right? There aren't rules and regulations in an edifying relationship. We've learned that. However, we have to set up the very base understanding of what's going on. So, we start with the first one. The first one we learned, what was the first commandment? No other gods before me. And when we looked into that one, we translated it as, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, right? That is the base, the underlying prioritization of God's love. That's what the first commandment really means, right? They say, I remember when I was a kid, Mom had this wooden plaque that was about that thick, an inch and a half thick, and it was on the wall, and it had a piece of metal, and it was carved out onto it, and it looked like the Ten Commandments, right? And it looked like two big old stone tablets. So it was a big old thing that you hang on the wall. And I think every old person had that, no offense. Old person had that in their house. There's that. Your mom or your grandmother always had the Ten Commandments, and they always had that footprints. Yeah, that footprints story hanging in the house somewhere, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? So in that first one, it lays them out in single sentences, and honestly, they don't even have a period on them, all of them. So it's just a single chunk of statement. The first one was, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And it's a really rigid description, you know. When you translate it and you look deep into it, you understand that it's love is what you're trying to get from that. Love, it's one of the characteristics. You learn compassion from understanding God's love. It's one of the very characteristics of God. It's kind of what comprises his person, his being. It's who he is, right? And we have to remember that we are also created in the character of God, right? God's this big old thing, right? He's this giant being with all-powerful, all-knowing, everywhere at once sort of cat, right? And he's all over the place, and he knows what's going on all the time. But we're modeled after him. It's similar to full-size Camaro or a Mustang or whatever kind of car you like. I got my big old Cadillac, right? And a little Matchbox car. It looks the same. It's got the doors, and sometimes they open up and close, and it's got the same body shape, and it's got the tires on it, right? It's just much smaller. You can't actually get inside the toy car. The toy car isn't going to do like a Camaro and go from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. But, right, it would be pretty cool. But it's got the same characteristics as that real car, right? The model car has the same characteristics. It's got the same body shape, it's got the same size, it's got the same look to it and look and feel. And it's the same thing with us. We're modeled after God. So we're working our way continually to try to maintain his characteristics in ourselves. Now, he knows that's not easy. He knows that's not easy because of who we are. Just like saying you can't really use that little bitty toy car to get to work and back. You know, that's not going to work, right? But there are characteristics about that car that are similar. So we have to press ourselves. We have to move ourselves all the way, always moving forward. It's kind of like the characteristic of generosity that God has. In the Bible it says, give to me the first tenth of everything you bring in, right? God doesn't want your money. God doesn't need your money. Trust me, he's good with that. He blesses folks. He doesn't need to go to the store. Oh man, I need to ration this because I ain't got no bread for this week. No. He's pretty good and settled, right? What does it say? 1,000 cattle on a hill? Yeah. A cattle on 1,000 hill. Sorry. Better? Oh, I apologize. So, God is ever abundant. He doesn't want your money. What he wants is to see that you are working to have the characteristic of giving without thinking of yourself. So God loves a cheerful giver. He doesn't want your money. He wants you to be able to give of yourself freely so that you can build inside of yourself one of his characteristics, right? He wants to see your selfless character. If you ask God to help you be more generous, he's not going to fill you with magic bubbly feelings of generosity and just selling all the things that you don't need and giving it to folk. Same thing with patience or any of the other things, any of the other characteristics of God. If you say, God, help me to be more patient, he's not going to just fill you with magical feelings of not needing, to look at your clock all the time. What he's going to give you is an opportunity to be generous or an opportunity to be patient. And it's up to you at that point to decide whether or not you're going to be patient or to decide whether or not you're going to be generous. Right? You guys are following me? This is something that we learned from the first commandment. We also learned that the first commandment was what we called an axiom. It's a statement of truth. It is a real thing. It is one thing, one statement of truth. Like we said, 1 equals 1. That's a true statement. And from 1 equals 1, we know that 1 plus 1 equals 2. And all of our math is built off of the idea that 1 is 1. Right? All of the 10 commandments follow suit once we realize that there is no other gods before the Lord God that we know. If you don't get that in there, then your prioritization falls, and all of the rest of the commandments thereafter crumble by the wayside, right? That's the thing on which these are all built. Now, it's not to say that rule number 1 is more important than any of the other rules. Not at all. They're all equally important. You can't say, okay, well, as long as I love God, I guess I could go and steal somebody's stuff and kill them. No, it doesn't work that way. You don't pick and choose. They're all equally important, right? But the first one sets the tone for the rest of them. So that's what we learned from the number 1. Number 2, excuse me. Remember number 2? Anybody? No graven images. That's right. And on Mom's big old plaque it said, "Thou shalt not worship any graven image." But we learned. Let's go there for real quickly. Let's go to Exodus 20. It's number 4. Exodus 20, and I believe it's number 4. I'm reading out of the New Century Version. We learned the number 4 is about the idols. It wasn't just that one statement, "Thou shalt not worship any graven images." It says, "You must not make for yourselves an idol that looks like anything in the sky above, or anything on the earth below, or in the water below the land. You must not worship or serve any idol, because I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. If you hate me, I will punish your children, even your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But I will show kindness to the thousands who love me and obey my commandments." Right? So that's what we saw from the second one. It wasn't that short statement. It wasn't those few words. It wasn't an incomplete thought. It didn't say, "No graven images." There's a lot more to it. It described very particular the images that you shouldn't be making. And from that one, we learned about faith. God said, don't create something that looks like something that you can see and need it to worship me. Right? Yeah, don't require to see something in order to believe in me. Have faith. That's what we learned from the second one. We learned that this is absolutely all about faith. If you need something, if you need to see something physical in front of you in order to believe that there's a God, then you're limiting God's ability. You're putting God in a box. And we all know about that box. Everybody's got that box in their house, the one that kind of sits off in the corner or in the attic or in the basement, just sits there and it never gets unpacked and it never moves and it's always dusty and you know what I'm talking about? Everybody's got that one box. That's where you end up putting God, if you put those limitations on him. If you don't have faith, then you can't have love, you can't have compassion, you can't have all the things that require faith. Remember, because I can tell you that I love you, but that doesn't mean that I love you. I guarantee you right now, you give me enough money, I'll stand on top of this building butt naked and profess my love to you. It's not really going to mean anything. It's because you gave me money, right? Love, saying it isn't anything. I know people who hate each other, but they've been married and are stuck together and have been like that way for years and years. That's not love just because you stick with somebody, right? Love is unseen, it's unfelt, it's unheard, you can't smell it, you can't taste it or touch it, but it's there because you know it's there. It's something that you truly believe inside of you, that the other person has this compassion for you, and it reciprocates, it goes back and forth. And that's how we are with God. You have to believe that there's something outside there. You have to believe that there's something bigger than you. You can't say, I need to see it in order for me to believe it, because that limits not only God's ability to do what he does, but it limits God's ability to interact on your behalf. At that point, you find yourself, by your lonesome, all alone, because you limited God. Right? You following me? What was his name? Doubtful Thomas? He said, unless I can jam my fingers in the hole in his hands, I'm not going to believe that God's here. Right? What a terrible thing to say. Right? Imagine, and hypothetical, I know it's never going to happen at all, and this is just an example. But if Benny were to get into a car accident and to be seriously injured, and I thought she is dead, I would be absolutely distraught. I would be taken aback because someone for whom I care very, very deeply is no longer with me, right? I would you'd just be hurt and beat up and sad and inconsolable for a moment. Doubtful Thomas, he said he had to stick his finger in Jesus' hole in his hand before I know that he's real, right? And that's no good. And that's like me saying, I know this would never happen, and this is only an example that, let's say Benny was hurt, she was in a car accident, I thought she was dead, I'm all distraught, I'm all worked up, and somebody calls me up and says, Jerry, Benny's alive, come down to the hospital. And me saying, yeah, I'm not going to believe you unless I can go and touch the bandages that are all over her head, and that's just messed up. You don't say that about somebody, right? So, that was number 2. We come up to number 3 today. Anybody know what number 3 is? Really? You forgot? Wait for it. What you mean, these people? Almost. That was last week. What's commandment number 3? Anybody? Yeah. It's a different wording, but yes. Yes. We call it blasphemy, but the rule says. So, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain, right? That's the one. That's where we are right now. The Lord's name in vain. So let's get right into this. I got to move quickly. So, we are not taking the Lord's name in vain, right? There are a bunch, of different translations. What do you guys think it means? Tell me.
I hear people saying, I swear to God.
I swear to God. Yep, that's an example of one. Yeah. GD, yeah. God, gosh darn it. Yeah. Yes, the real one, yeah. Say, yeah, screaming out the name of Jesus Christ, but in a manner that is not befitting, right? Yeah. Yeah, oh, God, really? Cheese and rice. That's right. Right, all of that. That's good stuff. So, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord in vain, right? Let's read it. Let's go back to Exodus 20. Exodus chapter 20, right where we were. And we are going to do number 7. I am going to read out of a couple versions. I'm going to start with the King James Version, just because it's the one with which most folks are familiar. Okay. Ready? Number 7, Exodus 20, verse 7. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Taketh. Yeah, that's the King James. Taketh. Yes. He cannot taketh their nameth in vaineth. That's the King James version. That's old school, right? Yeah. Right? So, don't take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, right? Now, there are a couple of other translations out there. One of them says, don't use the name of the Lord carelessly, right? Don't just throw it out there like it's nothing, right? Don't use the name of the Lord unnecessarily. That's another one that I've heard. My personal favorite is don't use the name of the Lord your God thoughtlessly. Don't just, it's not really in your head. It's just shooting out like it's nothing, right? Don't just blurt it out like it's don't. Yeah, just take it for granted is what it's. Exactly, like the boy who cried wolf, right? Yeah, what's that? Repeat. Yeah, it's kind of like the word love. If you use it for everybody, oh, I love you, oh, I love you, oh, I love you, oh, I love you, and then you really mean it one of these times, oh, I love you, I really love you. Like, you say that to everybody. High school sweethearts. Yeah. No, you don't. You barely even know what that. Yeah, exactly. So if you use it all the time and you use it carelessly, then it loses its emphasis, right? It loses its power. And we all know there's power in that name, right? That name is what, let there be light, and there was, right? If you ask in the name of the Lord God, then you shall have it, and it's all over. In the name, in the name, in the name, in the name. But why is that, right? So let's get it into perspective. All right, I'm going to give you guys an example. Before I go, Melissa and Joe, I love you guys. So, here we go. Our example. I have a pair of nieces, Desiree and Ashley. You all know Ashley and Desiree. They're young girls. They have so many amazing qualities, but you have no idea? That's okay. You'll meet them. They have some really amazing qualities about them. They're both very, very pretty young ladies. They're both super, super smart, even though they may not exercise their intelligence as often as I would like them to. They're both very, very strong characters. They have a good sense of self, a good sense of what's going on about them. They're very well in tune with who they are, right? A lot of good qualities. But this one story is about Desiree in particular. And Desiree, she has a shortcoming about her that all of us at one point had, and that probably Joe has right now, the little one, is that she's young. And you know how you were when you were young. You thought you could just go off and do whatever. You were indestructible, invincible. You knew everything. Yeah, exactly. And we know that now. But when you were younger, it didn't really click until you actually lived it. The way my brother Reyes says it, until that 16-wheeler called life runs you over because you're walking in the middle of the street, you're really not going to know what it's about, right? You don't really know what's going on until you're beat up. It's pretty much what it comes down to. And that's where she is in her life. She's 21 years old. 22 now? 22 years old. She's indestructible. She does what she's going to do because she knows what she wants, right? And like I said, that's all right. She'll grow out of it. For right now, that's where she is. So, in my house, I like to keep drinks around. Soda, pop. My favorite is cherry Coke. It's my downfall. Oh, I love it. And my dentist hates it, but I hold on to it sometimes. I can't be mad at you. I can't be mad at you, baby. I love cherry Coke. I always tell folks, if I was done and I was going out and I had one, say, okay, you get one drink, what would you want? Cherry Coke. That's right. Just exactly. So, I keep cherry Coke in my house, and it's really tasty when it comes out of the can. You guys know soda's always best out of the can or out of a glass jar. Oh, yeah. Oh, man, it's the bomb. So, I keep that around. So, I have one last cherry Coke in my house, right? and Ashley and Desiree come by. And Desiree's sitting on the couch, and I have to take off for a moment, and I'm on my way back. And while they're in there, this exchange goes down, right? Desiree's thirsty. She gets up, and she walks over, because my house is her house, apparently. And she opens up the refrigerator door. Hey, look, there's a cherry Coke in here. She grabs it and closes the door, and she walks back towards the living room. And she's got my pop in her hand. And she goes to crack it open. And Ashley says, "Don't drink that." All right, so I want you guys to take a step back from the situation and kind of put yourself in that position for a moment. Imagine yourself as a 22-year-old young lady who's invincible and knows everything, right? When your younger sister, who's several years your junior, says, "Don't do something," what's the first thing you want to say? Who you talking to like that? I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Whatever, right? And that's kind of the hamster in the head starts to kind of twirl around that little wheel in there, and she starts to think, I don't need to listen to you. You're not the boss of me, right? I can do what I want. And she said, well, why not? I'm going to drink it anyways. I ain't going to listen to you. She goes to crack it again. And Ashley says, "That's Jerry's," because she knows it's the last one in the house. Okay, so at this point, the dynamic has changed a bit. Ashley has invoked my name into this particular situation. And in invoking my name, you have to see that this is Jerry's house that I'm standing in. This is where Jerry lives. Jerry pays the bills up in here. Jerry gets the final say up in here, right? Jerry's the man. They recognize when you invoke my name, you also invoke my position. My position in this home is at the head. You should respect my home and my things in my home, whether I'm there or not, right? And every man and every woman that has their own place is just like that. You're not just going to have somebody come in and start making a bunch of noise in your house. You show respect, right? So when she said, "That's Jerry's pop," just those three simple words, the entire dynamic, the entire scope changed, because she invoked not only my name, but she invoked my position as the head of the home. Further, when she invoked my name and my position, she also invoked my characteristics into the conversation. And one of them, I'm going to admit it, I tend to have a poor disposition on occasion. I got a temper. I'm sorry. I try, I really do. But I have a tendency to get upset sometimes. And when you say, "That's Jerry's pop," you're saying, this is Jerry's house, this is Jerry's pop, and you know how Jerry can get when you drink his last pop, sort of thing, right? She didn't have to say all that, but there were those three words that totally changed the scope of the situation that they were in at that point. Everything changed for just that moment when she said that. Now, Desiree is now, right, sitting here in the middle of my living room, holding on to my pop in my house, and she finds herself at a bit of a conjuncture. She finds herself kind of at a fork in the road. Her options are one or the other. She can crack the pop and suffer the wrath that has been invoked into this conversation by saying my name, or she can be patient and let it go, right? When a person is presented with a situation like this, immediately everybody in here is based on choice. Every characteristic about you is based on a choice that you make. Everything, when you got up, when you came here, when you went to work, whatever it was your choice to do it. Nobody can force you to do anything, right? So when a person is met with a choice, the first thing that we do is we like to take to ourselves. We like to understand who we are and the situation, and then make the choice depending on what we think is going to happen given each one, right? So her options are don't take the drink or do take the drink. So she's got to weigh it out in her head. If I don't take the drink, what is Jerry like? So she has to further explore my characteristics. I'm a fairly generous man. I like to think I am anyways. And my nieces and nephews know if you just ask me, I'll probably give it to you. Even if it's the last one, I want a drink of it too, but you get the rest, right? But everybody knows, and for the most part, we're probably all like that. Even if it's the last one in the house, if you ask, I'll probably just give it to you, right? And all of us are probably the same way. Hey, I'm in your refrigerator. You mind if I have your last soda? Sure, go ahead, take it. Help yourself. You're a guest in the house, right? Because we're all decent human beings there. The other side of it is to disregard the situation, the coming situation, rather. So she's kind of weighing out a little bit further this one, because the first one, the pros and cons is pro is she'll get the drink. The con is she has to wait for it and get my permission, so there's a chance she gets the drink. Over on this side, the pro is she gets the drink and she gets it now, she gets it all to herself. The con is there's a chance that I'll get upset. So that's not, I'm going to get upset, right? Because there are a lot of factors that depend on whether or not I flip my lid, right? Yes, sir.
Especially you being gone, knowing that you could have picked some up.
Exactly. I could have been out picking up drink, and then she could have yeah, exactly. So she's weighing all this out in her head. And anybody faced with a choice is always weighing out the consequences on both sides to try to just figure out what's going to go on, right? So now, when she takes a step back from the situation and you think about it, she has to decide whether or not she thinks I'll be upset and whether or not my being upset is worth getting the drink right now, right? So she's got this thing. She can violate this unspoken rule of the house and suffer my wrath, or she can be patient and wait for it, right? So.
It's like I'm there right now.
Right. Well, it's true, yeah. So yeah, exactly. What's she doing? So there are some folks you don't want to mess with, right? So the question becomes, how much does she respect me? Right? When you invoke my name into this situation, when she said, that's Jerry's pop, I may not have been in that house, but my position, my characteristics, my temperament, all of that stuff was in that situation at that very moment, right? So it has nothing to do with to drink or not to drink. It's how much does she respect me and my home, right? Whether or not she drinks it, or that's all it is. This is what happens when we invoke the name of God into a situation thoughtlessly. Man, you...
It's almost like Jesus is coming back, and it's like Jerry's coming back.
Exactly. Exactly. Not to say I'm... But, yes, exactly. Jesus is pretty nice. He probably won't punch you in the head. Me, on the other hand, come on, man, the last one. Nope, a 12-ounce can. Yep.
Oh, I was thinking like a big.
Yeah. Oh, I got a Coke in the refrigerator. Oh, man, that'd be great. And yeah, no. So, but yeah, that's what happens when we thoughtlessly invoke this name of God into any given situation. Go back one step. Desiree, she drank my drink. Oh, man, I tore her up. So anyways, that's what happens when, yes, ma'am.
Will she do it again?
I
Situation up enough that she won't do it again.
I think that she would ask next time. Especially knowing that, she probably would have gotten it if she just asked. And there would have been none of this noise that she would have had to deal with. And by the end of it, God, it was just a pop. It was the principle of the thing. You must be crazy in my house with all this noise. Don't you come in here yelling. I was going off about anything. So that's what happens when we invoke the name of God into a situation where it's just careless. It's just unnecessary. The name of God has respect behind it. We have to respect it. The name of God has power behind it. When you invoke the name of God into it, when you evoke the name of God into a situation, it's serious business because we know God's position. We know God's temperament and characteristics, and God doesn't play, right? That's what happens. We're showing him a disrespect when we're invoking the name of God and invoking God's presence and invoking God's characteristics and invoking God's position in the universe, because just like I'm the king of my house, God is the king of this universe. He created it, right? We're showing him a disrespect. And everything is built on a respect. Remember when I said we had to set up those base rules? We have to set up those ground rules because we have to set up a mutual respect between the two of us, and then we go on with our relationship, right? Let's turn to Exodus chapter 2, verse 23. 2 and 23. Same book of Exodus. And again, I am going to start in, actually, let me see here. Which version do I want? All right, I'll start in this version. Ready? All right, so chapter 2, verse 20. Or excuse me, 23. I'm going to read first in the New Century Version, and then I'll go to the King James Version. New Century Version reads, "After a long time, the king of Egypt died." Now, this is where we are. This is prior to the Exodus. This is prior to the people coming out of Egypt, all right? So this is right before the Pharaoh Ramesses took over, all right? So, after a long time, the king of Egypt died. That was the one that had killed the firstborn that he was trying to get rid of, Moses, and he didn't even know that Moses was still around. The people of Israel groaned because they were forced to work very hard. When they cried for help, God heard them. God heard their cries, and he remembered the agreement that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He saw the troubles of the people of Israel, and he was concerned about them. All right, I'm going to read that again in the King James Version. All right, number 23. "And it came to pass in process of time that the king of Egypt had died. And the children of Egypt sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up to God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them." All right? Okay. Remember when I said we set up the rules first? Then we further our relationship. When we're like a romantic relationship, a business relationship, whatever it is, you set up the rules first. There's a respect before there's love. If you look here, this happened before the actual 10 Commandments were written. Prior to the 10 Commandments being written, before God even had or even started to want to work with a relationship with Israel, he had respect for the agreement that he had with Abraham, right? I talked about the covenant with Abraham and God for a couple of months ago. God respected that covenant. He set it up, and he said, and you remember they had two animals, everything was split down the middle, and then one had a dove and one had a pigeon, and God came down and lit it himself. And God said, if you take care of your half, I'm going to take care of my half of this agreement. And Abraham said, God, if you take care of your half, which I know he will, I'm going to take care of my half, right? And that's where the covenant between God and man started, with Abraham, right? So his people are down there, and they're groaning, and they're looking for it. So respect actually comes before love. When you're dating somebody, even if you're going to be married, you don't love that person until you get to know them. And before you even start to get into the relationship where you're going to love them, the first thing you do is you set up a mutual respect between the two parties, right? Long before there's thought of children, long before there's thought of marriage, long before there's thought of love, long before there's thought of affection, there's a respect between the two of you. And if there isn't, then that relationship is pretty well doomed. You follow me? All right. So respect is also a characteristic of God, right? Respect, he respects his people. He respects those who respect him. Everybody knows respect is earned, not given, right? Fear is what's given. If you're afraid I'm going to beat you up, then you're happy to listen to what I have to say. But if that has nothing to do with it, then you respect me because of what I am and how I live, how I conduct myself. It's respectful, right? And everybody knows about that. Respect is a characteristic of God, and respect further invokes self-control. All right? Yes, sir.
Respect is a in all of us.
Absolutely.
Today, I went and put gas in my car,
Mm-hmm.
and there was this guy coming from me. He prepaid his gas, and now went to the door, and I was. So I let him get ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy opened the door for me,
Mm-hmm.
let me in,
Mm-hmm.
and I told him, you guys, before me.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, sir. Call me sir.
Called you sir. Yeah.
You know, that's respect.
That's absolutely. You don't find that with young kids too often no more.
Where, big guy, white guy,
Mm-hmm.
you always look at that little guy. And I was one, but you open the door for me, and then you call me sir.
Yep. Open the door for you and called you sir. Yeah.
You know that, that makes my day.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Respect is a huge, huge thing. It actually comes, like I said, before love. It's set. It's got to be there for this to work. It's got to be there for love to be there. It's got to be there for faith to be there. You have to have a level of respect between the two people, between the two parties, right? Remember the story that I told you about Desiree? If she didn't drink my drink, she drank my drink. But if she had chosen not to drink my soda, the respect that she had for my position is what stayed her hand, right? When I say that's Jerry's pop, she could have, well, who's Jerry? I don't care about Jerry. Jerry ain't nothing anyways. Nobody's scared of Jerry, right? Right? That's showing absolute disrespect. But when you stop and you say, this is Jerry's home, this is Jerry's home, this is Jerry's drink, I'm going to respect these boundaries. That respect further enforces self-control, right? It further enforces that impulse, right? So love and respect fall hand in hand. And respect, like I said, first respect, then love. Knowing respect and love and all those work together. When you love and when you respect, there has to be mutual, right? Like with love, you cannot show favoritism. Let's go with Acts 10, 34 and 35. Acts 10, 34 and 35. Acts 10, chapter 10, verse 34 and 35. Is that what I had? There we go. What's that now? Acts chapter 10. Yes. No, you're fine. Huh? It's done. No, all right. So Acts chapter 10, verse 34 and 35. Peter began to speak. I really understand now that to God every person is the same. In every country, God accepts anyone who worships him and does what is right, right? With God, there isn't a form of favoritism. There can't be favoritism when it comes to love. First respect, then love. And love is all-encompassing, right? Love goes out and it grabs everything and it comes through. It's not self-righteous, it's patient, it's kind, it's understanding, it's forgiving. And furthermore, does not show favoritism, right? Love does not show favorites. Paul said that. You guys follow me? You guys remember? So, if I'm to love everybody in this congregation, I can't show that I have loved one more than another. Because people tend, showing favoritism breeds animosity. It makes folks fight, right? Like, let's imagine a parent and their kids. Everybody knows you cannot love one child more than another. For parents, for well-balanced human beings, it's not possible. They're your offspring, they're your kids. You love every one of them. But if you decide to start showing favoritism, and we see it in classic stories all over the place, like Cinderella and like all these other folks, right, where they start showing favoritism, what happens is the children start to bicker amongst themselves to try to get more because there's more in one position, right? And then later on it escalates. And later on in life, the kids end up teaming up against the parent, right? And then you've got two kids that are saying, she always played favorites with both of us. Let's both get her. Let's both hate her, right? Or him, or whatever it was, right? It causes all sorts of dissension. Everybody starts to team up. So we have to show respect equally. Respect has to be given, or love is shown equally. And respect is something that's earned. But there's a base amount of respect that's given to every person, right? Let's go one more time to Romans. Romans 12:10. And then we're gonna stick in Romans for a little bit. And actually we're done in Romans. We got two things in Romans. So Romans 12:10. We'll start with 10, then we're gonna jump to 16. Romans 12. Bless you. Okay, here we go. Romans 12:10. Love each other like brothers and sisters. Give each other more honor than you want for yourselves. Right? This is Paul telling folks to love means to show respect. And to show respect, you give respect. Right? And you give respect more than what you feel that you deserve, because that builds up the amount of respect that you receive later. Let's jump down to 16. And number 16, live in peace with each other. Do not be proud, but make friends of those who seem unimportant. Do not think how smart you are. If someone does you wrong, don't pay him back by doing him wrong. Try to do what everyone thinks is right. Do your best to live in peace with everyone. Right? So, we show respect for one another. Let's see here. I touched on this a little bit. Let's go to Romans 13, 1 and 7. One book up, 1 through 7. Chapter 13, 1 through 7. And while you guys are getting there, it's shown over and over that there's a level of respect that needs to be paid in order to get respect back, right? But we also have to prioritize ourselves so that we know where the respect is supposed to be going. When I talked about the first commandment showed us about love, it showed us about compassion, it showed us kindness, but it also showed us that we have to prioritize things. The first commandment has to have the priority because everything is built off of it. Not to say it's more important, it's just the one that sets the tone, right? Commandment number 1 sets the tone, and it has to be up at the top because it sets the tone. And then it moves on down through the rest of them. So when we show respect to one another, it's not just respect to everybody, but it is respect above us. It said in that last one, show respect to people that you think are unimportant. Treat them better than you would want them to treat you. And it goes the other direction too. And like I said, I touched on this a little bit before. I read 1 through, I believe 4, but now we're going to go from 5 to 7 as well. Let's start with Romans 13:1. We'll go through 7. All must yield to the government rulers. No one rules unless God has given him the power to rule, and no one rules now without power from God. So those who are against the government are really against God, what God has commanded, and they will bring punishment on themselves. Those who do right do not have to fear the rulers. Only those who do wrong fear them. Do what you want. What is it to do? Do you want to be unafraid of the rulers? Then do what is right, and they will praise you. The ruler is God's servant to help you, but if you do wrong, then be afraid. He has the power to punish. He is God's servants to punish those who do wrong. It has to start up at the top and move down. Where you are in both directions, up and down, right? Let's go to number 5. So you must yield to the government, not only because you might be punished, not just because you might be punished, but because you know that it is right. This is also why you pay taxes. Rulers are working for God and give their time to do their work. Pay everyone then what you owe. If you owe any kind of tax, pay it. Show respect and honor to them all. From the top down, you cannot teach a child to respect his elders if you do not respect your elders, right? If you blatantly show disrespect to your parents, don't be surprised if your child blatantly shows you disrespect. And it goes on down. If you blatantly disrespect the child and then you wonder why your child is kicking your dog, what do you think you learned it from, right? The respect has to flow from top to bottom so that it comes out of you. First respect, then love, right? Set up the ground rules, and then you move forward with the relationship. There has to be a back and forth, with the respect being key at that point. Don't take the Lord's name in vain because you invoke his position. And when you invoke his position, that is serious business. You follow me? That's real at that point. So just saying, oh, God, I wish, Doug, and God darn you, and do this and all this other stuff, when that really happens, it's your fault because you didn't show self-control. You didn't keep yourself in check. And now somebody is suffering because of your blatant and unnecessary self-righteousness. Because you think you're big, because you're not showing respect, because you're not showing self-control and maintaining a composure, somebody else is suffering, right? When you have that respect, when you show respect, then you get respect, right? When you show respect greater than what you think you deserve, that's what it said, you get respect greater than what you think you deserve. It goes back and forth, and it's absolutely unspoken. We were talking about, like, Chencho just a little while ago. He said he never met this guy before. The guy had gotten to the door before him when he was going into the gas station, but the young man stopped, opened the door up for him, and let him walk through. And then Chencho tried to let him through, and to let him, go ahead, go on, you were first. You go ahead. No, sir, you first, please, right? He called you sir. He showed you respect, and because of that, you'll respect him in kind, right? And you got that respect because you weren't walking up in there, yeah, I'm going to go up in here and I'm going to do all this. Yeah, I'm going to. No, folks don't do. No, you walked in there, you were stood up tall, you were proud of what you were doing, you were just going about your business. You get a respect. Exactly. And you thanked him. You were appreciative. That's the key. That's one of the keys that we have here. I have another story to tell you. And I'm getting ready to close with this. Mom, the pastor. At this point, she's mom. So, she used to work for this company called Hungry Howie's, right? It was a pizza place. Yes, great pizza. I worked there too. I worked inside and I delivered pizzas. But Mom helped out with the marketing thing, right? My really, really good friend, Paul, he was the manager. He was the general manager of this place, and he needed to bolster his sales up. So one of the things that he would do, he would get all these flyers together, and then he would, as he knew Mom, and he trusted Mom, he gave her the flyers, and he told her, go and hit these key locations, and Mom would handle it from there. All of my friends, Paul included, call my mother Mom. They love my mom. They respect her. My mother, she doesn't look it, and you guys really don't know, but she's extremely intimidating. She's a very strong character, and she commands a certain level of respect about her. But she also shows respect in kind, right? And all of my friends see it. So like I said, they're all very good with her. They're all very personable, and they're all very respectful. They try not to cuss when they're around her, and trust me, my friends got some dirty mouths, and nobody drinks or smokes when they're around Mom, right? And I remember when we were living in a rough spot. It was a pretty rough neighborhood, and there was always these hard, thug, gang-banging cats that were sitting out smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer on the porch outside of the apartment when we were kids. And we would come up and, oh, Ms. Torres, can we help you? And put their drink and their cigarette behind their back. Can we help you with your groceries or anything? Open the door for her, and one of them was carrying the grocery with one arm and trying to hold his beer behind his back because everybody knew there was a beer behind his back. He wouldn't hide nothing from nobody. But he was showing Mom a level of respect because she commanded a level of respect. So all of my friends, and it's carried on throughout her life, all of my friends, they show her a very large amount of respect. They love her. They appreciate her. It's been set up in the beginning. But the level of respect that I commanded was a little bit different than what Mom commanded. Mom commanded real respect. Me, I get loud, and I get angry, and I'm a big guy. So it's more fear than intimidation than respect. But Mom, she commands a very sure level of respect. So, she also used to have other folks help her out on this thing. She'd have one of her friends come over and here, help me deliver flyers, and they'd give money, and everybody gets a little bit of whoever's helping out. Sometimes I think she had Joe help her a couple of times, and so it was a cool thing that she had going on with Paul. And Paul trusted her. Go over in this area, kind of northeast of here, and take care of that. And she would go there and she'd make it happen, right? And she would hang up all these flyers all over the place. Okay, so the business was purchased by another smaller company. And Paul was given the charge of the store, and they hired somebody else to handle the marketing portion. And this person handled the websites, he handled the commercials that were on the TV, and he handled all that stuff, and he also handled the flyers. So Paul had the responsibility for the flyers taken away from him, and it was given to somebody else, and Paul focused on the store, which is fine. Somebody comes in and buys stuff, and it was restructured. That's cool. So they had this guy. I don't even remember his name. And he says to Paul, he says, all right, I'm going to do this. Who handles your flyers? He says, oh, because some stores didn't even do it. He says, oh, yeah, I have a good friend of mine. his mother does it. She takes care of it. She handles it, blah, blah, blah. Talked her up really good. And, and all I got to do is point a direction. They go and they do it. He says, all right, well, I'm going to be in charge of it now. So tell them to come up to the store, and we're going to have a meeting, and I'm going to tell them exactly what we need to do because we got to kind of change things up. This is my responsibility now. Pal says, fine, calls everybody up. Everybody comes to the store. Mom and her folks, and then some other folks that he had recruited along the way to do all this blanket advertisement all at the same time. Now, I wasn't there. But Pal was. And this guy was standing up there, and he was talking to everybody. He is a real stern young man. And he asked Mom a question, something to the effect of how she does things and how he's supposed to do them. And he tells her, and he goes off. You're not supposed to do it like that, blah, 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 and starts yelling at her like a disrespectful employee, going off at Mom, right? Making a bunch of noise. Now, anybody who knows Mom knows that she can handle herself. I'm not too worried. You disrespect Mom, I've seen her go off. She'll step up to the biggest, ugliest. She don't matter. She's in your face the same as her. But in this case, that young man was her immediate supervisor. That young man was her boss. He was going off on her, and it wasn't right, especially not in front of other people. You don't put people down like that in front of other folks. You take them to the side. But he did it anyways. And Mom was met with a choice at that point. She can do what's normally happens inside her when someone disrespects her and step up, who in the world do you think you're talking to right now? And just go off on him, right? But she didn't. She had respect for his position, and she stayed her tongue. Right? She didn't say a word to that man. She said, okay, I'm sorry, no problem. I'll do it how you like me to do it. You're paying me, right? Not more than a couple of seconds after that, Powell comes from around the corner. Who do you think you're yelling at? And man, he is in that guy's face with fingers in his face, and he's pointing at him, yelling at him, talking all kinds of stuff. Boy, he tore him up, made him feel this small, right? Just cut him down. I don't care what you was doing. You was doing it wrong. Well, I don't get that. Just went off on him. And after all of that, at the very end, just to add insult to injury, you know that's Jerry's mom, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, man, I don't tell Jerry because look, I'm real sorry. And he goes out of his way in front of everybody. I'm real sorry. I didn't mean to. And he's apologizing over and over and over. I didn't even have to. I wasn't even there. See, at that point, she held her tongue, and she allowed the respect that she commands to take care of the situation. She showed respect for that man. She showed respect for his position, despite the fact that he was being disrespectful and he was overstepping his bounds and he wasn't doing it the way it was supposed to be handled. She showed a level of respect and self-control that comes from having respect to something greater than you. And she allowed the respect that she commanded herself from Powell to do all of her work for her, and from me to do all of her work for her. This is what I want you guys to take away from commandment number 3. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. It's a level of respect. We have a service and a respect to God. We have to show him a service, and we show him a disservice when we take his name in vain. You invoke the name of God Almighty. And it's not something to be taken lightly. But when you show that respect, things come up in life. And when they do, step back, show the respect to God, and let the respect that God commands take care of the situation at hand. Right? That's commandment number 3. So, that's what I had for today for number 3.